Rod, I know this next character very well, and indeed you do, Billy. And when Billy began to hit the headlines, the top men in Irish rallying were Cathal, Curley and Adrian Boyd. And two very different types of characters and two very different types of cars. But everybody had their favourites. You know, the Sammy Hamill of the Belfast Telegraph, he was a Curley man, you know. And then Adrian had his own friends and his own thing. But this was serious competition, wasn't it? You had to...
Yeah, well, the man to beat at the time in Britain and Ireland was Roger Clark. And, in fairness, CB was one of the few people that actually beat him in the Isle of Man. And,
well, let's meet him. Cathal Curley, ladies and gentlemen. With book.
Come on, hurry on. We haven't got all night, you know. Come on.
Cathal, have a seat.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's right. That's not going to be easy.
Have you got a microphone? No,
Yes.
Isn't it always amazing? The best of rivals become the best of friends. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Cathal, this whippersnapper turns up in an old Ford Escort. That must have been a bit of a shock.
Well, it wasn't greeted with a lot of glee. Plum, you know, like I was saying to Austin, who's the buffer driving this car that should be in the scrap heap? You know? And then we started to look at times. This boy can fill the pipe. And by the way, I can tell as many lies as any Cork man from the north. You know? There's a big northern contingency here, and I won't let you down. I'll tell as many lies as I have
to. You were the king of Donegal, Cathal. You really had marked that your own territory, and of course you won the very first Donegal International Rally, which was out of Rosapenna, but not easily.
Rallying in those days was never easy, and you know, if you were going to be rallying locally at that time in the early 70s, you had himself to contend with. And I remember very clearly in the Circuit of Ireland in 1974, it developed into two rallies, first time ever. It was the Coleman rally and then the Circuit of Ireland rally. We arrived in Killarney and I was leading Billy after all day Friday, all day Saturday, all night Friday night, all day Friday, all night Friday night, and all day Saturday. There was 11 seconds separating us. Ronnie McCartney was third, and he was 3.5 minutes behind us. So there was the Coleman Curley rally, and we headed out in 74. And I always say to people, I didn't really win the 74 circuit. Billy Coleman won it for me. Because on Sleigh Head, and I've told the story to a lot of people, it was a special stage, and there was a farmer who I never got to know, but I should have been back thanking him. There was a C-shaped corner. In the centre of the bend was an entrance into a farmyard, and directly across from that, on the bend, was an entrance into the field. And the farmer thought to himself, there's a rally coming here, so I better get some of this work done. So he started to unload manure from the farm straight across the road in the middle of the bend into the field. And I was first on the road, so I came to it. And I don't mind telling you that my mother's friend, St. Jude, who's the patron saint of hopeless cases, she must have been working for me on Sleigh Head, because I came into the corner in Sleigh Head as quickly as Billy Coleman was making me go, and I lost the car. And I got into a big drift and a big slide, and I saw a wall on the left, and I closed my eyes. but it didn't hit it. Somebody up above was working for me. Not good driving, not anything special by me. I was out of control. I was an autopilot at this stage. So I went on to the end of the stage, and the next car through, instead of it being Billy, was Ronnie McCartney. And he says to me, Billy's in a bit of trouble. He hit the manure and he clipped the car. And the battery's not working for him. And I don't mind telling you all here, honestly, I said, thanks be to God. Yeah.
Billy, we met him.
Well,
Now,
sir,
we were done to win the circuit by 5 minutes.
Wait a minute now.
Sorry.
If you were a proper sportsman, you'd have got out the bloody car and slowed down the next car. Yeah, shut up. And they might have cancelled the stage, which would have been the honourable thing to do.
Thank you, Billy.
But actually, do you know what? There wouldn't have been 20 seconds lost there, but this Ford Escort had a ridiculous. It had the isolation switch just above between the taillight and the number plate. But the mechanics in Boreham and Ford just always say you can always tell the good drivers from the bad drivers, because the good fellas usually hit the back of the car and the bad ones hit the front every time. So, and we had kind of a massive slide, and it wiped the back of the car off the whatever it was, stone wall. But you see the car, like he says, we had no battery. Couldn't find bonnet up. Couldn't find what was wrong. And geez, at the end, all that was wrong was it had taken out the isolation switch. So all we do, opened the boot, joined the two wires, and away we went. But there was the end of the contest.
I know.
You're lucky, so and so.
Well, I must say, as far as the 74 circuit was concerned, it started at a rapid speed between himself and myself. We pulled away from everyone else. How it was going to finish, I don't know. But Michael O'Carroll, who's here this evening, a big hand for Michael O'Carroll. Michael was Billy's mentor, and Sammy Hamill in the Belfast Telegraph was my mentor. And Michael O'Carroll was a great supporter of Billy, as was all of Cork and all of the country. But now, what was I going to say to you there, Billy?
Actual fact.
I was going to say how it was going to finish if what happened in Slayhead wouldn't have happened. Was either going to be the toss of a coin, either Billy Coleman was going to be off in a big way, or I was going to be off in a big way. And it just so happened that luck stood by me. I got round the corner, nothing to do with achievement or driving or ability, just absolute pure luck. And Billy just tapped the quarter panel and it disconnected his battery. Couldn't get the battery firing again, lost 3 or 4 minutes, and I immediately went into a fairly substantial lead, and it was a sort of a cruise from there back to the north of Ireland.
And then the party started. We saw a message from Phil Coulter earlier, but then the party, I think it was Slieve Donard, wasn't it, that night in Newcastle? Was that where it finished when you won the circuit?
Yes.
And it was amazing. Phil was the sort of entertainment backup. You had a service crew. He had an entertainment crew.
Oh yeah.
And they used to. This is true. They used to come to a hotel. One was destined to book the rooms. The next was destined to arrange the meal. The next was destined to get a piano, and away they went. Yeah, what a party!
You see, Plum, we were just about the driving.
Billy said to me afterwards, and I'll never forget it. And he's reminded me a couple of times since. Said, and excuse me if there's any children here. What Billy said to me was, there must have been a fucking 5-litre engine in that Porsche.
Just I wouldn't put it past you, But as you mentioned, Michael, I mean, a lot of us here and people abroad would never had a career in motorsport, but for Michael O'Carroll.
Yes.
And in fact, he really, the profile he gave the sport on television, the individual support, like we became great friends over the years. And in fact, you know what? I used to meet Eddie Jordan, and now and then, and he said, "Fellow Carol, you know," said, "I can't get a mention in the evening press because of you." You know? But I mean, okay, I think Michael was mainly a rally man, you know, and but he was incredible support and a friend down the years, and mentor and advisor.
Well, Billy, you didn't have to wait too long to get your circuit win, because that came the next year. And I've got a very nice little surprise for you, because your co-driver is Paul Phelan, who we know is not very well at the moment. But Colin Doherty is here with a very nice little surprise. Up you come, Colin, where are you? And we'll get you a microphone here. We could borrow a microphone.
You have enough cups, so you're not giving me this one. I said I'd come up here on one condition.
Bit of a surprise. So, sorry for the pace notes. In 1975, you won the first of your 3 Circuit of Ireland victories. And your co-driver that day was Paul Phelan. And Felix, as most of us know him, had already got second place in the 73 circuit alongside Eamon Cotter, and later he took third with Ove Anderson in 77. So now I'm told that Billy doesn't always keep his trophies. Well, Felix always kept his trophies. So sadly he couldn't be here today, but that trophy is from the 1975 trophy. It's here, and he's happy to pass it on to you, Billy, for you to look after it for him. Thank you.
Well done.
Well, and of course, a thorough gentleman too, Paul. And actually, how Paul ended up in that drive was Tony Mason was supposed to have done the circuit with me, who was Ford rally manager as such, next to Peter Ashcroft. And at the last minute, they entered Roger Clark, and Mason went with him then. And before I knew it, I was told it'd been on to Paul Phelan. They said he was top man in Ireland at the time. I got no say in it at all, and that's how it happened. Yeah.
I remember being in Larne at the finish of the circuit, and you'd won it, and there were new rally jackets. But Paul always had his sports jacket underneath, which was known as the office.
Oh, yes.
Because there were pens everywhere, you know. Yeah. And I was walking down the corridor, this bit behind the Ford team manager, and here was Paul with the new Ford tight jacket, trying to get it on over the sports jacket, and the sports jacket hanging down below. And Peter, I think it was Ashcroft, he says, it's going to be hard to make them professional.
Yeah.
Cathal, you have a little presentation here.
Plum, yes. I have a book here, and it's the only book in the entire arena that has been signed by 2 very decent people. The 2 people that signed it was Billy and, of course, myself. Now, whenever I show it to Billy, it's like showing Dracula a cross. You know, Billy, AUA 1500, that was a nuisance car. But Harold Hazard went this week and paid £200 on eBay for this book. That's how much they're costing at the moment, £200. And he wanted it to go in the auction here. And we thought that would add to the value of the book if it was signed by Billy and myself. So when it comes up for auction, AUA 1500, Billy's in it, but I'm on the front cover on this one.
Cathal.
And then Plum, just one other thing. I said I was coming up here. I was only going to talk about one thing because, you know, blasting about your ego, and I won the circuit, I won the Manx, I won Donegal, I won Cork, I won that. I said to Plum, I'll come up on one condition. And he said, what's that? I said that we get into a discussion about sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Thank you very much, Cathal Curley. So, just sum up. You had great fun together. You had great competition together.
Absolutely.
Sum up your assessment of this man.
Well, the immediate thought that comes to my mind, Plum, would be a bloody nuisance. You know, no matter how hard I went, he was able to go equally as quick. If I went a wee bit quicker in the next stage, he went a wee bit quicker in the following stage. You know, but
in spite of that 5 litre,
in spite of that 5 litre engine, yeah.
That wasn't easy.
But we reconciled a man together. We were always friends. I've an awful lot of time for his brother John, who's an absolute gentleman. I had an awful time for Dan whenever he was co-driving with him. Michael O'Carroll, I've still got an awful lot of time for Michael, although he was an absolute Billy committed fanatic. And, you know, we had competition. We never had a crossword. We never had any sourness or any reflection of ill feelings about ourselves. If Billy won, I was the first to shake his hand. And if I won, he was the first to shake my hand, which is, in essence, the requirement for a proper sports person.
That's it, gentlemen. Cathal, Curley. Always an entertainer. Great to have you here today.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cathal.
Thanks, Ricky.